All right, a very warm afternoon to you all. I think the session just separates us between the lunch and you all. So I'll try to make it brief and make it more impactful as much as possible. Before that, I just want to ask you, how many of you are from the product companies, and how you can just raise your hands. Manufacture products and services. All right. A very honest question in terms of, do we end up creating a product before we actually test whether the market or the customer needs? Or are we creating a product or a service and then trying to take to the market to find out whether the customer needs it or not? This is one of the biggest gaps that I keep facing from time to time whenever I meet with many entrepreneurs and may have sessions. So there's a very interesting, powerful question that will have to linger in the mind. But right before that, let me quickly take you through what the agenda of the session could be, what you could expect, what the customers expect, number one, some kind of insights, survey the trends, and what do you need to build an effective strategy. This is, of course, across any kind of enterprise, whether it's product or services, right from the positioning, the goal setting, building our team, marketing strategy, the digital strategy, partnership, and the de-risking strategy. So that's what I'm going to cover right now. So to start with a quick overview in terms of what the customers today expect. And we are talking about B2B. I'm not going to cover a big amount on the retail part of it, but then it's business to business. So if you look at 80% of the customers today expect you to know who they are, where they are, and they all want this in real time. Okay, this is close to about 80% of the B2B and small medium businesses that is looking for. When I say that, it actually means that your strategies need to be aligned with the market. So you can't have a different strategy that you feel is right than what the market might need. So both have to be aligned. So if you look at it, the organizational goals for B2B small medium business has been predominantly the brand awareness, lead generation, engagement. Over the last year, the brand awareness has come to number 2 position, and the lead generation has gone to the topmost slot. So why do we do that in terms of content? Yes, we need to generate leads because that's what we are all there. And how do we generate, how do we derive good engagement and improve your own brand? If you even look at some kind of tactics that these small medium businesses use, social media content has been one of the biggest areas of focus for most of the small medium businesses, followed by blogs, followed by newsletters, and then articles on your website. So fundamentally, you need to start projecting yourself better in front of your customers, because without which today companies may not stand to survive for too long. And if you look at the numbers, it's an astonishing 93% have said yes, we are focusing intensely on social media content, and that stands at absolute number 1, and very closely followed by blogs. Okay, let's look at the top trends. If you look at the social media per se, has moved a notch up from the last year to this year, from about 87% to close to about 92 or 93%. Blogs typically about 77% to about 87%. And if you look at infographics, it moved from about 48 to about 60%. So I think these are the top 3 trends which is going in a big way in terms of what most B2B companies, small medium business companies have been focusing on. So this is just to let you know that what you should be focusing on, where successful companies have already been doing, and what probably you should look at it. First and foremost, I will stress upon the point that focus should be on the customer and the customer's need. Repeating again, focus on the customer and customer need. Let me give a quick example. I can call myself as a consultant. Or a better way to say, I can say I'm a business consultant. It looks a little more sharper, right? Or I can still say more sharply that I'm a business growth consultant. I mean, that's what I actually do. I help grow businesses. But then I felt, can I be even more sharper and crisper so that my audiences understand me? Do I say myself as a business growth expert for startups? it clearly makes a difference in terms of you'll be able to connect as to what you're trying to say. I think this is the message that every one of you probably might need to project it in front of your customers rather than being very generic. Another very quick example I can say, I'm a consultant, I'm a marketing consultant, but then when I say I'm a digital marketing specialist for startups, it becomes even more strongly reinforced in terms of the pitch that I try to give you. Another interesting example that I came across the internet, very powerful, it catches the eye, and obviously no need to say that this company has been getting a lot of responses and a lot of service contracts. And if you look at it in a race, you don't need to be way ahead of the competition, right? You don't need to be miles ahead. We call it as you just need to be nose ahead. Even a running race, at the finish line, people will duck their head just to make sure the nose comes in the first, right? That's a prominent part. That's the first part. So that's the strategy. So you don't when you all face competition. So you don't need to be significantly bigger or have a phenomenal lead when you talk about your own competition. You just need to have a small difference that is better even by a nose ahead kind of a scenario, and you will be able to win or close deals and pocket a lot of customers. Okay, now let's look at the typical strategies, which is absolutely essential for every small medium businesses. How many of you honestly set goals in your organization? Do you do a goal setting at all? How many of you actually practice it in terms of setting goals? Nobody sets goals? Okay, this is absolutely paramount and mandatory that you have to set goals. Every one of us, right from the CEO down to the person who actually starts to work. So, why? Number one, how do you do that? You need to pick your markets. Goal setting doesn't just mean that, okay, I'll do from turnover 4 crores to I'll do 5.25 crores. That's just not the goal. That's probably the revenue goal. But how does it drill down to everybody else? You need to look at where do I pick my markets, whether the market could be Pondi, Chennai, Pan-India, global, etc., etc. Your customers, what kind of profiles that you would like to go behind? Do you want to go behind $1 million accounts? You want to go behind small customers? You want to go behind the mid-sized? You need to have a very clear strategy, number one. Number two, list what you really want to achieve and let that be very, very realistic. Don't be too overly optimistic and you find out that it cannot be reached and then you just lose out on that. Or you set too small goals and then just relax on top of it. So I think you need to be very, very realistic. And more importantly, anything that does not get measured does not get done. So you have to have a goal, you need to monitor, you need to measure that, without which you may not be able to achieve things. Number two, equally important is building your team. Because end of the day, it's all about people. I keep hearing a lot of issues, challenges that is posed by many entrepreneurs. They typically say, it's very difficult for us. We have constraints. I know startups have a lot of constraints. You have constraints on resources, you have constraints on money, you may have constraints on branding, you may have constraints in terms of experience or people to support you. So how do we end up building a team? How can you even invite the right talent? Or it could have a locational constraint. How can you invite the talent to you? I think it's a $1 million question, but then there are smarter ways to handle such issues. Number one, you need to have a right compensation strategy. Not everyone can say, okay, you have been getting 10, I'll give you 20 or 15. I think usually it doesn't work because it's easy said than done. But then you need to have a right mix of a salary as well as stocks. The stocks need to be valued because today, otherwise it will look like a tissue paper, right? You need to showcase value that today, this is what it is. But 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the line, it could be significantly high. So today you are worth so much, but then down the line, this is what you are worth. I think that should be showcased. Number two, you also need to have a good retention strategy. When you say retention strategy, the guys need to know what they are in for it over a long time, which means if I stick on with the company for a long period of time, what am I planning to gain? So if I leave it in 3 years, probably I may not be able to encash stuff. But if I'm there for 5 years, great. Why do I need to lose another 20 lakhs that I would have otherwise got, right? Which I'm just leaving it on the table. So I think you need to showcase that kind of a retention strategy and award those performers, reward those performers keep the stock growing, and at some point in time, they are at a long time, give them the reward. You need to have that. You also need to showcase them a very, very defined growth path, because nobody wants to be in for a surprise. If today I recruit a guy, I tell them, okay, you join me as in X position, but then if you do this well, you will have this growth in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years. In 5 years, I would like you to grow from a business development manager to a vice president. Possible? Absolutely. Maybe 3 years. Why not? So I think you need to show a very well-defined growth path. And your team needs to be in sync with your mission. Because most often, I also see that other than the CEOs and probably many companies, not even the next in line, know exactly what the company's goal and missions are. What do they plan to achieve, and what is the aspiration that the company is trying to build upon. I think that's a big disconnect in terms of that I have personally seen with almost numerous startup, small medium enterprises. So you will need to have that kind of synergy, bring right from top to bottom, everybody with a synchronized mission. In fact, I'll give you a quick example which just flashes me. Have you heard about a company called Zappos in the US? Any one of you? There's a company called Zappos in the US. It's a shoe company, and I think you should read it in the net sometime when you find time, but let me just quickly tell you. It's known for its customer excellence. Customer service, we call it as, that's customer excellence. Everybody says we walk for the customer comes first, etc., etc. But we don't honestly live that. We don't live that. You talk about any companies outside, they'll say, yeah, customer is important. Customer is the first person in the premises, and he is the last person to be treated, real dirt. This is universal, it's common, but this company stands out separate because they have a training program. When people get in, they get trained. I don't remember the duration, but it's about, let's assume it's for 3 months. They get paid stipend, right, a few $1,000s. And towards the end of the training program, if I recall it right, they will give to all the trainers a $10,000 check and say, if you leave the company, take this money and go. Leave this company today, pick up this $10,000 check and go. Of course, there are some guys who will take the check and walk away. Absolutely fine, it can be in cash, you'll have the money in the bank. But then, there are many people who will stick and say, I don't want to check, I want to work in this company. That's the kind of character that I have built. And today, if you even go, I have numerous examples. I have had friends who have gone, purchased, used the shoes, slippers for weeks together, come back and say, hey, it's not good, throw it, they will give you back without questions. Oh, is it good? Fine. In fact, there's a case of old lady, not able to do it. She has to send it back. They took care of even shipping charges. I mean, look at that's customer excellence. The reason that's happening is that everybody is connected right from top to the person who's executing right at the floor level, right? Who's helping you wear those shoes. Everybody knows that we need to believe in customer excellence and customer support. So that's what I'm talking about, team to be in sync with the mission. And most importantly, fix accountability. You need to fix accountability. Who's responsible for what? If company is not growing, where is the accountability is held? If the delivery is not happening as per the goals, where is the accountability getting held? Because if you're not making people accountable, then you won't be able to measure. If you can't measure, you can't succeed. Next, most companies will have to focus on marketing, which should have an excellent lead generation strategy. So typically conversations like when you go meet a customer, they will say, hey, who are you? I have not heard about you. I never heard of you. Because we are small brands, we are trying to build up a company beyond our very close circle, nobody else may know us. So we need to have a very, very strong marketing and a lead generation strategy, which changes the conversations from I have never heard of you to say, hey, I am part of your community. We are connected. I've seen you in Google. I've searched and then you came on the first page. So it's great. So you are becoming more familiar. You are establishing a warm connection with your own customers or with your community. It's an ocean, but let me just scratch the surface. First and foremost, when you are doing digital, see, typically you can't be present in front of your customers everywhere, and neither you would like to put up a billboard and say, hey, come and watch. In fact, back in 15 years ago, when I was the regional head for LG, I used to pick up. I was handling the South Zone when I used to put up hoardings LG hoardings. I'm talking about IT, not the consumer durables. But then that was the case. It was right. We don't have any other digital media channels, or I have to put a paper ad. Okay, that would anyway come in. But then how do I pull eyeballs to the brand? So I used to put hoardings, etc., etc. But the sad part is there is no way you can measure the success of it. You don't know how many people are actually looking at it. There's no measure. I can keep spending as much money as I want, but not sure as to how I can do. But in a digital marketing strategy, you can measure every part of it. But before that, we need to have a plan as to what are we trying to sell, number one. Who is our target audience? What is the message that we need to create to our target audience? What your marketing objectives are. If your marketing objectives are, say, I want 1,000 people to visit my website, 10,000 people to visit my website, yeah, that's a marketing objective. Or you would say, I want 25 people to click and fill the forms and say request an inquiry or something like that. That's a marketing objective. So you could have a different objective that could be different for different companies. And how do you plan to track the ROI? If I spend X money, can I track the return on investment? Have I got the right audience? Have I got the right results? And you can tweak it because you have a lot of analytics. You will be able to tweak each and every of your spends that you make in the digital marketing. And trust me, it's an extremely powerful tool, technique to use digital marketing. And by the way, it doesn't cost a bomb. It's fairly cheaper in whatever traditional marketing way of spends that you could have. So please don't ignore the digital marketing strategy. In digital marketing, you can do two things. One is an inbound, where you make people come to your site. That would happen through a SEO. We call it a search engine optimization. For those of you, to clarify, if you Google, say, Xperts, E-X-P-E-R-T-S, Xperts in startup, my company, the URL will come at the top, right? Even though it starts with X, but then that's a kind of a keyword, so it comes up. So that's SEO you need to do. You also should engage in social media. You can write blogs, and then you can write white papers. You can have discussion forums that could happen. All of that is inbound. So if you look at outbound strategies, number one, you can have SEM keywords, right? You can pay for some keywords, saying that manufacturing of this, so I'm saying it's paints. So immediately you'll see Asian paints and other things coming up, right? So people advertise for it. So you pick up, you'll spend money on that. Email campaigns. Most often I see junk emails coming in, and it's a very, very powerful technique. And if you look at mailers are typically sales mailers. No customer wants to receive a sales mailer. Why will they need a sales mailer from you? There are hundreds of people, right from banks to credit cards to services like even the digital marketing. I mean, everybody starts sending out a sales mailer, say, I can do this, I can develop a website, 25,000, 10,000, 3,000 rupees, etc., etc. We really don't want sales mailers. We occasionally it's okay, but then when we end up getting too many things, we immediately junk it or spam that, right? So whereas this can be used very powerful, it can help you position as a thought leader in the space. You keep writing articles and showcase through email, through your customers, you are not selling. The customers will come to you and say, hey, I write the article, can you do that? I write a lot of articles, I write blogs. So people come and ask me, hey, can you help me with this? You have given this particular strategy to do that, can you help us build that? So that's making people come to you rather than you going behind them and saying, hey, I can do this. And webinars, you can conduct virtually online, virtual conferences. So I would suggest you should exploit this very, very high impact and low cost options, search engine optimization, analytics, because the moment you have a website, you can have a lot of information, the data that would be there, and you can pick up who are visiting your site, how many guys, what kind of category, what gender, which location, what geography, which page are they interested in, where are they moving out. Tons of information is available, so you can use the analytics, email marketing I told you, pick up feedback from the customers. It's a great choice because it's personalized communications. It's far more effective than the follow and like that you see in Facebook. It may not have any meaning. This is measurable because you will exactly know how many people open, how many times they open the email, what time they open the mail. So you can track everything and then send personalized communication if you have a CRM system to manage that. And it's an experience that you're sharing with your community, with your customers. So, but when you do that, your context should be relevant to the customer. So you don't want to send out some information that is completely irrelevant and the customer may not like it. So make it more relevant to the customer. And finally, seek partnerships. This is something very, very effective in building up alliances, because it helps you reach out to your customers. It's virtually like multiplying your sales force. So if you have 5 partners, it's like 5 of your sales guys sitting somewhere else and trying to do the sales for you. So build effective partnerships and alliances. And you also need to have de-risking strategy. I think the previous session we had we touched upon the de-risk part of it, but yeah, I think it's something which every one of us have to take care. Entrepreneurship is not about taking big risks. You will take risks. The moment you are an entrepreneur, and if you're sitting here, which means you have definitely taken a risk in your life by jumping into this. You could work for some company and still earn some compensation, some salary. But if you're doing a business as an entrepreneur, you've already taken a risk. But the smartest way is, how can you de-risk your business if there's a setback? So take cautious, calculated risk, and then move on with that. And I also see many companies finding challenges in terms of ability to change, right? This is the way we are working, we cannot change. I think that is difficult in today's context, because if you don't, then you will get wiped out. Numerous examples. What happened to Nokia? We all know that. 3 years, 5 years ago, market leaders, #1. Did we ever imagine somebody can just run them over? Look at where they are, right? So there are many examples. This is just not alone, but there are so many. BlackBerry even, email, nothing, irreplaceable. If you want email, 9 out of 10 will pick that. Today, there are numerous examples. I just quoted IT because every one of us use mobile phones, so the thought just came in. And the other way around, there are people who have the inability to see results. I have seen people when the business could be very close, but then just lose steam and say, hey, let's close this initiative. Let's not continue. So I have seen both things happening for the small medium businesses, which ideally should be controlled. So finally, to sum up, we talked about customer expectations. Yes, they want to know what they are, who they are, everything in real time. And we also talked about focused on the blogs, the content that you need to focus upon. And then for effective strategies, you need to look at positioning yourself, like crisp way of presenting yourself to the customer. If a customer thinks about you, what comes to their mind? I think that's positioning. I explained about goal setting, which is very, very critical. Then equally important is to building your team and some strategies to have compensations, everything, retention linked up. We talked about marketing, we talked about digital strategy, very, very powerful. Irrespective of your business, you could still have your customers in Pondi, you could still have your customers in Chennai, in India. Irrespective of that, you have to have a digital strategy. Because today, look at it, everyone uses a mobile phone. 5 years ago, how many of us used a touch screen? Probably no one had, right? So these are challenges. This is the way market is going to change, and it's better to be, if not early, better to be late and then get on with the stream, and then utilize the digital effectively. It's effective, it's cheaper. Then of course partnership, by which you can expand your sales reach, and obviously look at de-risking strategy. Just last 30 seconds, where I come from. Though Sandeepan said we have a good relationship, part of the SMB Connect Startup Connection in Bangalore. So we support startups right from business strategies to target segmentation, sales, marketing, brand building, digital campaign, marketing, etc. And yeah, so this is the Startup Connection that I was part of in Bangalore. Been speakers in numerous events and conferences. Some recognition, this is just a 2-year-old entity. And then we were featured in the Silicon India's yearbook as the Emerging Company of the Year last year. Yeah, that's it, just my